Hey everyone, welcome. This is our second YouTube live event with NGOT. My name is Dominic. I'm the publication director, and with us we have Devin, the social media director for NGOT, and the one and only OT Miri.
Hello.
Miri, we're so excited to have you today. Thank you so much. I know it's been a process to get this going, and after my technical difficulties, we're finally up and running. So I appreciate you being patient with us.
It is my absolute pleasure to be here live with you and Devin. Thank you so much for having me.
And I think, Miri, before we get into like the nitty-gritty NBCOT stuff, I also want to just have you maybe fill in for anyone that's been kind of living under a rock, like who you are, what your path to OT is, like what you're doing now, and kind of where you want to see it to go in the future.
Okay, well, my name is Miri. Many of you know me as OT Miri. The channel for OT Miri on YouTube was, it happened spontaneously and without much thought, although it was birthed with a lot of pain. And I feel that everything in my life sort of led up to that point, and I would have to go a little bit into my history, but without talking too much about it. OT is my third career. I majored in psychology at Berkeley many years back. Worked in healthcare administration, loved it, thrived in it, but really wanted more of the human, meaningful occupation. And then I went into entrepreneurship, and that was a first step, but it was very successful. And then I thought, I love entrepreneurship. I love healthcare. I have this desire for creativity. I'm going to pursue occupational therapy. And it was like a light calling that just dropped on my lap, and I was so happy to pursue it. I was happy all the way through until NBCOT. And this journey was one of the most painful, lonely, anxiety-provoking path I had ever taken. And I'm Asian, and so just to, it's an Asian stereotype, but academia hasn't always been so difficult for me. I thought I would thrive all the way through, and although the program at USC was pretty rigorous, I passed the comp exam pretty easily, and I thought, hey, NBCOT, I'll pass and I'll be on my way in 6 months or so. And I gave myself a long time. But I got 422. And I remember meeting with my program director, and everyone was surprised that I didn't pass. And I sought a lot of feedback and guidance, but I was hearing the same thing over and over again, which was a very general prescription. Practice, use clinical reasoning. And then I kept thinking, like, what's clinical reasoning? It just sounded generic. I don't even know what clinical reasoning means. Think critically. Okay, like, is there a blueprint for thinking critically? So that I kept getting all this advice and not knowing really where to go. And everywhere I turned, resources were expensive. It was expensive, and so I kept spending money that I didn't have, time that I didn't want to spend, and then I promised myself, if I pass, I'm going to make content and resources, and I'm going to make it available for all to access, regardless of ability to pay for it. And that really was the driving point. I wanted easy access to everything I learned, and I wanted to contribute to our profession in such a way that no one would come out of this exam feeling deflated or not confident to become an OT practitioner, but that they would go out into the field and stand next to their colleagues and their PTs and speech therapists and doctors and be like, that's right, I'm an occupational therapist and I know this stuff.
Yes.
I wanted to make that impact, and I wasn't sure that I could, but I wanted to try. And I think, and this has been becoming a really long intro, but one of the things that many people don't know is that one of the most popular videos to this day was one of the earliest videos and ones that I recorded while I was still studying. You don't have to be an expert to teach yourself, because I think every person can be there and is their best teacher. It's a matter of owning that and being confident in it. So that's sort of where OT Miri was birthed. And today I'm pregnant. So I have no idea where I'm going to be in 6 months. I have a belly that's growing, and every time I go out, people are like, "Are you having twins?" And I'm like, "No, just one." But I'm open to all possibilities. My passion in OT is with mental health as well as with women's health. And so I'll probably explore more of that once the baby comes. And who knows, I might have another YouTube channel with a baby like breastfeeding and stuff, like lactation, I don't know.
Your future pediatric videos will be awesome. We'll have like a live demo.
I want my baby's first words to be like ATNO. And I'll be like, my job is complete.
Well, Miri, I know like just on behalf of the OT community and new grads in general, we all just greatly appreciate everything you do. I passed the exam almost 12 months ago, and I definitely used you as a resource. I couldn't have done it without you, so thanks. Not enough nice things can be said about you. But I know Devin here is studying right now, and she takes it in a couple weeks, and I think she might have a couple questions for you.
Very nice.
Yes. And I actually also want to piggyback off of what Dawn said. I graduated in May, so my cohort, we're all studying right now. I think one of us has taken it so far, and she passed. Yay! But the rest of us are all still studying, and I'm not even kidding you when I told my friends, guys, I get to do a chat with OT Miri. What are your questions? Everyone is like, she's amazing. She has taught me so much. She's helped me organize how to study. And I definitely have some jealous friends because I get to talk with you because you truly are just such a huge person in our field. And especially as new grads, like we really, really look up to you, and we learn so much from you, and we're so grateful because we know that you have a lot going on in your own life and you don't have to take time to do all that you do. So we really, really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you.
Truly.
That's so sweet and generous.
And I do have, if we want to jump into a few questions, I do have a few questions, some regarding some NBCOT study info, and then also some more kind of general new grad transitioning into that clinical role. And first, I would love to hear any tips and tricks that you have, which I know you just mentioned that you have a passion for mental health. So how would you, or what would you say to someone who's dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety surrounding the exam? Maybe they've done all their studying, they know the material, but that mental health component is really getting in the way of them succeeding.
I feel, so this is a question that I receive very often. And even when I receive emails and they're not spelling it out in those terms, like I want, I'm stressed about the exam, I don't feel prepared, but there is a cohesive and a very common theme, which at the end of the day always comes down to inability to manage and discipline our own mind and our own heart to be aligned with where we need to be on the day of the exam or on the days leading up to the exam. And I think this is the most common question. And the answer, while there's no magic pill or magic bullet for it, I think is really comes back down to the basic, and it's doing the simple things. I think that our mind and our heart takes as much practice, like daily practice, as learning to do multiplication table. It's almost like a habitual. There's a pattern of thought that needs to happen, and it takes exercise. In the same way we have to exercise our muscles and our heart, our cardiovascular system, we have to exercise our mind to think a certain way. And I know for a fact that I had a negative pattern of thought. I started to write this down. I made a list, and it was shamelessly very, very long. I had so many false lies over my life that was looming, and many of them were fear-driven. Many of them were based on social comparison of where I should be, because most of my colleagues passed the first time, and I can hear the program director saying, "Are you really gonna let your score, lower our percentage rate for our ranking?" There's a lot of pressure. I needed to write all of that down, and I challenged it. So there were the false truths, and I wrote all of my truth. And you can see it. I mean, it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy. And as an aspiring OT practitioner, I knew that I needed to begin to challenge those thoughts, and I needed to do it every day. So I think my first advice would always be to say, take hold and take reign of that thought, recognize it, acknowledge it, because that's what you're gonna do when you're out in the field. So much of what we deal with as a holistic practitioner is not only to look at a deficit and to try to remediate it, but to see what barriers mentally and emotionally might be challenging that person from tapping into their potential. And it really begins with you. And I wasn't able to do it every day. I wasn't able to overcome my insecurities every day, but I do know that by the time I was taking my exam the second time, there was this sense of, I've done my best. If I don't pass the exam, should anybody else pass the exam? I gave it that 110%, mentally, emotionally. Nutrition, I think, is also really important. I think when you are not providing your body with the adequate nutrition, and all of us know this might again seem basic, but knowing what is important and really applying that in your life. Do you have time to exercise while doing the NBCOT? Most of us probably don't feel like we have, but I think it's important. Exercise, nutrition, your own mental discipline. And this final one is something that one of our community members taught me. She reached out to me and it really surprised me. She said, Miri, will you tell me 10 things about myself that you love? I'm so sorry, that's my dog. Oh no, I have to chase my dog. So unprofessional, but you guys are sort of used to my living room and background. Let's hope she doesn't do it again. She asked me for 10 things that I appreciate about her, that I value about her, and she sought my affirmation, my validation. And this is a person that I had never met in my life. So I asked her questions, and based on our previous conversation, I had to discover things about her that were valuable, that were not generic. And then as I supported her in what I thought were her strengths, she gained strength from it. Meaning, sometimes we have to rely on our support system, even if it means that you're going to them to say, hey, look, this might feel vulnerable. It's not really what I do, but what makes you think that I'll be an excellent OT practitioner? Tell me, I just need to hear it. And tapping into your safety net, your community, to make sure that you're not depriving yourself of the support that you really could have if you looked out and saw and searched for one. Including NGOT, including OT Miri community, including, there's so many resources, and I think becoming resourceful and tapping into that is very important to keeping yourself safe.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I also love that you just gave some really great tools that we can use, because I think a lot of times if you say, oh, I'm really stressed, what do I do? Or like, I'm feeling very anxious, what do I do? And people say, well, you need to get a hold of that. You need to deal with it. But it's kind of like, I think we get stuck with the how. How am I supposed to not be stressed? Or how am I not supposed to be anxious? This is the biggest exam of my life thus far. Of course I'm going to be anxious about it. But I love that you just gave us some tangible tools that we can do. We can sit there and write down, things that, like you said, identify like what's really true here. What are these lies that I'm telling myself? Or even I've done this before, taking like a whiteboard marker on like your bathroom mirror and writing down a positive affirmation about yourself that day. Like, I am smart, I am capable, just something to help change that dialogue in your head. And like you said, get in the mindset. So I think that's great. You gave us some really great tools. Thank you.
Devin, when you talk about writing stuff, when I was taking the test, they give you like a small whiteboard or a piece of like laminated paper that you can write on with a marker and erase. And like before I started, I walked in there and I wrote my name or OTD, and then I wrote OTR, just like telling myself like I could.
Yeah.
I just like wrote it as soon as I walked in there, just knowing, like telling myself like I am an occupational therapist. Not
You're
just like a
it.
student. I am. And so that really helped me a lot.
Isn't that
I
powerful?
love that. I'm going to do that.
Yes, it's powerful to claim it for yourself and to own that even before you go into the premature center. So.
Devin, do you have any more questions?
I think she's frozen. I don't see her moving.
Oh, it froze on her pretty smile. That's good. Miri, I know the anxiety part for me was really difficult. What about just in terms of like setting a study schedule? Do you recommend 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, 1 week? What do you?
Yeah, so this is another question. I'm sure you receive it. There are many people who are concerned about and seeking that perfect study schedule, but I've said this often and I continue to say it, which is I don't think there is one set schedule or timeline that we can safely say would work for the majority, simply because I have seen way too many testimonies and experiences of people that have studied from as little as 2 to 3 weeks to, you know, months and even years sometimes. And it really depends on where you are in your life, what your priorities are. And I know that the general prescription is 2 months. And I do believe that if you commit yourself to 2 months and you're able to, you know, study, I don't know, 4 to 5 hours and do those practice exams, and you don't have, you know, to do much review, it could work for you. But if your learning style isn't one that, if you can't cram, if you can't read 3 to 4 hours a day, if you are easily tired out, I mean, you have to assess how you've been studying, what your learning style has been, how well you organize, how well you retain. And based on that, I think everyone has a responsibility to create a timeline and to give themselves a realistic time frame for when they would be ready to take the exam. Now, this is an advice that was given to me. Find out a realistic timeline and individualize it to you, but that also might be difficult, right? So like where do I put that baseline? Should I need 2 weeks or would I need 6 weeks? I would say take a practice exam or go through the material and sort of assess where you are. A good way to do this, and I know you'll probably go over the resources and type of resources that are out there right now, and there is a debate on this, whether it's good or not, but I think it's actually good to get a baseline or a gauge of how well you would perform without having studied. And that might give you an idea of how much you would need to dedicate to studying for the exam, whether it's 1 or 2 months. And that's something that can change also throughout the study program. If you find that the pace at which you're learning is slower, but effective when it is slower, then you can also extend that time out.
Yeah, I know for me, I had to do like slow over 2 months. Devin, are you back? Devin?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. We're glad to have you back. I was asking Miri about like a study schedule. And the reason, Miri, I wanted to ask that is because I know on the site, I can kind of see what's most popular or what's being searched. And that just happens to be one that people seem to be curious about. But for me, I had my test date and I didn't have like a I kind of went by subjects. Like today I'll do burns. So I didn't do like 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day. But I did tell everyone like in my life, that's like Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, like I'm busy. Like don't, and it doesn't mean I was studying the whole time. There were plenty of times where I was just on the couch or on my phone or went to the gym or something, but people knew not to like bother me, or not that I'm like super important, that people need my attention or presence all the time, but it meant like, my friends knew like I couldn't grab lunch with them or stuff like that.
I think that's excellent. I think this, for me, second time around, I definitely had a set schedule where people couldn't bother me. My phone literally was on Do Not Disturb. And I told my family that if they needed to reach me, text wouldn't cut it because it was on Do Not Disturb. Disturb. They would have to call me at least 2 different times for it to come. Right. So I think it's important to free yourself from distractions. There's an app called Productivity app that was recommended by Kate in one of the articles that she wrote, but it's an app that other people have also used and found to be very effective because it basically breaks down and helps you identify how productive you really are and how much of the allocated study time you're actually utilizing to study instead of being distracted. But it's really hard to sit for 5-6 hours to begin with. So if you are not maximizing 5-6 hours, then you're using that time in vain. So it's important to identify also how productive you really are and begin to eliminate the distractions that you know are going to occur when you are studying.
That's a really good tip. And I don't know if Kate sees this. Hi, Kate. She's super awesome, and I can't wait to have her on a live podcast or a live YouTube at some point.
Love her. I absolutely love her. I actually got to meet her in person shortly after she passed the exam. She flew out to California with her husband, and we had the most wonderful, wonderful time together. She's the founder of OTSalary.com. She's she's a mover and shaker, has a heart of gold. Everything she touches turns to gold. I'm gonna stop because I can go on forever about just how much.
No, that's okay. It's just a testament to how small the OT world is. She actually had a professor that then came to work at my school, and so like on Facebook, I was like tagging a picture after AOTA with the professor, and she commented that, how do you know Mary Hildebrand? I was like, how do you know Mary Hildebrand? So I love it. It's super cool.
It is a small community.
I'm running out of battery, so I'm going to plug in and let you ladies take over.
Yeah. Well, Miri, I could definitely ask you some more questions if you're willing to entertain us and share your knowledge with us.
Yes, please.
So this is more of a transition question, not so much the NBCOT, but obviously the transition from OT student to new grad studying to clinician, there's a lot of changes going on. Someone like myself, I've been a student literally my entire life. I'm 26. That's all I know is school. I've never been really like out in the real world. And I was wondering just generally if you have any tips or suggestions or any tricks, I guess, to help someone navigate just like these big changes. And then also an interesting discussion that I've had with a lot of my fellow classmates that recently graduated, and even with some classmates or friends that I have in other schools that recently graduated. We're kind of in this weird limbo right now because we haven't taken the NBCOT and we feel like we need to be finding jobs, but then it's hard. It's kind of awkward to apply for a job and say, hey, do you want me in 6 weeks when I pass my test? So do you have any suggestions? Like, should we just hold off on applying until we pass the test, get licensed, and then search? Or should we try to make connections now? What do you think?
I think that's a great question. And I think, I've written several articles, and there's certainly so many articles on NGOT that I think are so valuable for new grad occupational therapists and assistants. But my knowledge actually comes from having worked in administration in the hospital for several years. And I also had the opportunity to interview people coming to work in the hospital and did a lot of project management. And during this time, and this is really where I had my professional exposure to healthcare that was quite different than clinical, but I don't think that applying to job necessarily has to come in the format of searching for a job and then writing a cover letter and a resume. Those are essential ingredients and we need to have those. However, you can start that process anytime because applying for a job often in this day and age can happen through either finding a recruiter or being connected with an alumni association or going to job fairs. And one of the things that I think is so underutilized is informational interviews. I did a ton of informational interviews, and these are great because if I have an interest not only in the company, but in a person that I want to emulate, that I want to be like, I reach out to them. after I've done my homework on what research they've done, what kind of work they've done, and does it really align with my career path? And even if it didn't, if it was interesting, I requested a meeting. I went to so many informational interviews, not only with OTs, but with like project managers, with director of patient care services. And I just asked them a bunch of questions. I mean, sometimes I would just start off by saying, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what you're looking for. And the great thing about this is that you're not applying at this time. I mean, there's no pressure really. And I would say, I just want to know what it would take if I want to be you. It kind of scratches at their ego. But I mean, beyond that, people want to help you. People are generous. And if you reach out for support and for guidance, I find that more people than not are willing to give you the secret to their success, to how they got there. And out of that conversation can come a conversation about job opportunities. Hey, listen, I know you haven't taken your board exam yet, but why don't you give me a call because there might be an opening for you here. Hospital tours. Have you reached out to an occupational therapy department to say, oh my gosh, I really love this department. You could be a student. Go visit. See what it's like. There's always so much you can learn as a student, as a candidate in transition, because out of that genuine curiosity to learn about the company, about the individual, will come opportunities. And it doesn't have to be this rigid, sterile application process. It really can be, and this is just one of the things that you can do, since you asked, you know, if we haven't passed the board exam yet, but I would say tap into your network. Another underutilized, your faculty mentors, right? They might not be able to say, here, I'm gonna cherry pick you and put you in an organization. I mean, it doesn't work like that, but I maintained really great relationships with my faculty mentors where I can go back to them and now say, if I were to have problems with job search, what do you recommend? Where can I improve my candidacy? I've even done like a mock treatment session with one of my professors to be like, I want you to correct me on the spot. Am I, you know, I want to know if what I'm doing is culturally correct, if it's ethically proper, and if it's clinically sound. And I want your feedback right away. Now, that may not teach me what I need to know for the next year, but what that will do is instill in me a confidence, you know, to say, okay, well, I know that my professor thought that this area was a strength. I'm gonna really utilize that. Well, I know that my professor said this is a weakness. I'm gonna be mindful of that. And also, I know that I can go back to that professor if I have any trouble and, you know, get additional resources. So I'm gonna tap into that as well. And so again, people, resources, being resourceful, putting yourself out there and not being afraid, they can sense that. They can sense your curiosity, your confidence, your desire to work there. And who's not gonna want that, you know? So.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that this is a video and people can scroll back and listen to that and listen to that and listen to that. Because it's amazing. I know that's going to be on repeat. So many awesome pieces of information, things that I would have never thought about. And I think especially, you know, you graduate and you're looking at your student loans and you're like, I need to get a job. And, you know, you're so kind of like tunnel vision. And I think it's really easy to get sort of stuck online and just like trying to apply and trying to call places. But like you said, there's so many underutilized methods and resources. So I love that you brought some of those back to the surface for us. And I'm definitely going to start implementing some of those and get myself out there more because I need a job. So that's great. Thank you so much, Miri.
Of course, and follow up with me. I love hearing stories and seeing where people go and following up. So that would be great.
Absolutely.
Mary, you mentioned kind of like your careers before going into OT, project management or healthcare or something similar to that, correct?
Yeah.
I know Devin got a question from one of her friends, one of your very like loyal followers.
Big fan.
She's a big fan. And she was kind of wondering like how you use those skills, and then Devin can probably say it better, but how you use those skills and now with your website startup and using an OT lens. I think I probably butchered that question. Devin, help me out here.
Yeah. So my friend who, like Dom said, she's a huge fan of everything that you do. She super admires you. And she was really interested in your background with tech and startup stuff, and specifically how you utilize your OT lens and what you think about the role of OT or the opportunities of OT and things like assistive technology design and things like accessible fashion, et cetera, which I think kind of speaks back to some of your entrepreneurial experience.
Okay, well, that's a loaded question.
I know.
I can answer in so many different ways, but it could be a very long answer, so I'm going to try to pinpoint it to the best as I can. But there is so much advice out there. I think especially now with social media and all these companies that want to teach you how to increase your SEO, how to increase your personal brand, how to get, I just learned about the bounce rate on your website. I mean, there are a lot of tactics and strategies that you could find on many YouTube channels, many social media gurus. But I think one thing that is always taught and has always been consistent is, have you found a niche that is a need, and do you have what it takes to fill that gap? And does that skill align with your passion? And when I look back to all of my experiences, there was always an identified need. And so before I went into healthcare administration, I graduated from Berkeley with a psychology degree at a time where finding a job was almost impossible. If you're not a clinical psychologist, what do you say at an interview? I can read your mind. Like, I'm really good with people. I have a lot of soft skills, but none of the concrete skills, so hire me. You know, it was really hard. And so with with a bank account that was continually running in the red and without much support, I thought I need to do something for myself to get myself income because I wasn't getting hired. And every week I was watching The Apprentice show. It's run by President Donald Trump. But at that time, I wanted to saturate my mind and my life to that which I wanted to be, which at that time I wanted to go on The Apprentice show. So I wrote up a business plan, and I had intended on going on the show by submitting it, but I wanted to do a pilot project to see if it would actually work, because that will validate the worth of my project being on the show. 6 months into the business, I didn't need to go on the show for venture capital funding because I was generating enough income to have my own business. Now, this business was birthed from, it basically, in a very short caption, it was a online delivery service, a healthy alternative 24/7 for students at Berkeley who at the time only had Top Dog and pizza. And so I thought, there is no healthy alternative, there's no vegan alternative. I'm gonna make this 24 hours, I'm gonna deliver it to their house, and they're gonna be able to do everything online. Wow. Everyone thought I was crazy. They're like, you don't know how to make food? There's no, I mean, this is before Grubhub and like these online services. It felt very foreign to people. But from my perspective, I was 200 pounds. I had gained a lot of weight from cafeteria food. And I knew that this was a need for me. And if I needed it, other people probably needed it. So there was an identified need. I knew that my passion could fill that gap. And I also knew that by me working on this, I would feel like it was a meaningful endeavor. And so anytime you're able to identify a need that matches what you can deliver with a passion that is of yours, I think everything else is noise and detail. You will have an audience that will want to hear your story and that will want to learn from you, because it is driven by what you are passionate about and what people currently don't have. And from there, I was recruited into a hospital when an executive director saw the way that I was able to market and brand a seemingly innovative idea at the time that wasn't around. And So that's sort of how my entrepreneurship led me into healthcare. And from healthcare, it felt too sterile. I loved project management. I loved numbers. I loved organization. But at a certain point, I wanted people interaction, and that got me into OT. If somebody wants to do technology, entrepreneurship, I'm not saying that you have to go through all of these pathways, but I guess my point in sharing a little bit of my history is to say that in every opportunity you're given, don't do it in vain by thinking that that is not right for you. My dad always told me, you will never get a bigger plate unless you can be a good steward to the small plate you have and excel with that. And so with every opportunity, when I was really poor and I made that website, and the only thing I needed to create a delivery website was a barely working computer, and I put it together. Don't be afraid. I remember when the first order came in, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, this is a funky website, and the first order came in, you know? And when the time came for the payment and checks to the employee, I was like, I don't have an EIN, employee identification number. I don't have anything set up. I have to give them cash this time because I don't even know how like tax systems work. I think it's important to do your due diligence, but in every single one of my endeavors leading up to OT Miri, if I had known how hard it would be, I wouldn't have started it. If I had known how much work it would take, I wouldn't have started it. And if I had actually prepared myself adequately, as everyone tells you to do, I wouldn't have started it. And when Dom was offline, I think I shared this with you privately for a little bit, OT Miri wasn't ever meant to be a channel. You know, I had never made a YouTube video. I don't even know how to make videos. It was such an accidental, similar to many things that I've done in the past, but you learn along the way. You learn to hone and identify your need along the way, because when you find something that the community needs, the community will dictate future plans for you. And there will be engagement. So don't be afraid to start. If you want to go into technology and entrepreneurship, you're going to have a lot of naysayers that say, well, in order for you to start, you need to know how to use the website. I didn't know how to use the website. I created an Instagram for the first time and I was like, what's Instagram? Why do my people want me to be on Instagram? You know, and when people ask me to create a Facebook group, I barely created a Facebook group and I was like, I don't know how to use it. I made a ton of mistakes, but I was transparent along the way. Sorry guys, I'm making mistakes. I'm learning with you. Bear with me. A year later, this Facebook group has 8,500 members that are ever so gracious and patient as I'm learning with them. Don't be an expert, be a community member that listens to the needs of the community. And from there, if you know yourself that you're doing it in service of the community, there's nothing that people could throw at you that will really affect you, because you yourself are true to the mission that you know is right and worthy of pursuit. Are my answers really long? I'm sorry.
No, that is fantastic. As Devin said, I think we're getting a little feedback. As Devin said with the last question, I'm really glad this is a video because I'm going to go back and listen to it again. If I ever need some sort of like motivation, or just, you don't have to be an expert, just a member of the community. That's awesome. You should get that tattooed somewhere.
Yeah, and I also, Miri, I love how you said if you would have known how challenging, if you would have known how challenging it was going to be, if you knew all of the obstacles you were going to have to overcome, you wouldn't have done it. And I love that life kind of has a funny way of working out. And I think sometimes in a good way, we get a little blinded, and it helps us because we're not afraid to take that first jump. Because if we did know all the challenges, we'd probably be like, no, that's not for me. I can't do that. But then you would miss out on so many amazing things that you can do. So that is just so powerful. So amazing, Miri. You are so eloquent and you have so much wisdom to share with us. It's amazing.
I've worked on a lot. I don't know how old you guys are, but you know, I'm turning 37 this year. And I was always one of the older students in my class. And one of the benefits of having OT as my third career is that I've had a lot of mistakes in my former life. Now when I have, people emailing me and they've just, graduated and they're in their, 20s and they have their entire lives ahead of them and they're like, Miri, I just don't have the experience. I say, I want to trade you. Time is the most valuable thing, make all the mistakes now, because when you make mistakes as a new grad, as a 20 or something, it's cute. By the time in my age, they expect that, you kind of had your experience, but don't be afraid to, make those mistakes, trial and error. I would do anything to, I think time is really so valuable, and time is the one thing you cannot stop. It just keeps on ticking. And I know, Devin, you're preparing for your exam in just 2 weeks. And these 2 weeks, you could see it as like, 2 weeks leading up to like really stressful time. Or you could see those 2 weeks as like the 2 weeks that you'll never get back. Really, because you're going to take that test for the first time only once, Yeah. And actually really meaningful because it's a test that officially gives you the license to do what your heart wants to do. It's a really big deal. And I think if people ask me, is there something you regret about the NBCOT? It would be that, why didn't I spend that time as that one time that I would never get back? Like, why did I get so much gray hair? Would I have to like dye it again? Like, why did I do that to myself? Because there's always a different perspective, one that is so much healthier for you and beautiful. So anyway.
We have about 15 more minutes or 15 minutes left. Devin, do you have any more like concrete NBCOT advice you're looking for, or you think your friends or community need?
I think we actually did a good job of hitting on a lot of them. And I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that, Miri, you have done an amazing job with creating so many great videos and already answering a lot of those concrete questions. So I've been trying to make sure that I'm not kind of, just like rehashing the same things and bringing kind of like new questions to the table. I think we've covered all the ones. Let me just check my texts real quick just to make sure. I think I'm good.
Awesome. Miri, where can everyone find you?
Oh, they can find me. I think the best way to contact me, I get emails from or messages from many different platforms, but if you want the fastest response, it's always through my email, which is contact@otmiri.com. You can do it directly through my website, which is otmiri.com, or you can just put it in your email, but one of the things that I really want to recommend, and it's not because I don't want to hear from people, it's really, I love receiving messages and I love interacting with our community, but I just want everyone to know that I really am not, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not smarter than the people that are studying currently. I think my biggest desire and what I want to see most is people feeling empowered to take this exam with or without my help. When I get video requests from people and they're like, I don't know if I can do and master this content without you, and it makes me a little bit sad because I think I really believe they can. And oftentimes I will also get questions that can easily be found, whether on the Pedretti textbook or if it's a logistical question on the AOTA or NBCOT website. The key to feeling confident is knowledge. You have to know what is up against you, what is ahead. And if you are relying on other people to give you those resources, sure, I said, utilize other people for support, but do everything you can to understand the process for the NBCOT. I know that with social media, it's really easy to get instant feedback from your peers, but read through the NBCOT handbook, read through the NBCOT essential guide. I've literally compiled a huge library of resources on my website that was actually based on a careful examination and analysis of all the questions that I've received over the past 24, or not 24, 12 months, so that I can provide those answers. Now, I know that those are general answers and it might not fit everybody, but the point being, do your research and own this exam, because no one can help you better than you can help yourself. And I am no guru. I am not smarter. You're going to discover as soon as you pass your exam that you're smarter than me. Like and you're going to thrive and you're going to go on to do amazing things. So I welcome all questions and messages, but know in your heart that you have what it takes and that you know best when it comes to you and your exam.
That is great. I love all of that info so much, Miri. It's so valuable to all of us. And I have a fun non-OT related question that I think is just fun to provide insight on who you are as an incredible person. So Miri, if you were a color, what color would you be?
Black.
Black. Okay, why? You have to give a why then.
Oh, black is my favorite color. I think a lot of people see me as a bright, happy, effervescent person, and I think I can be. But if you were to ask me who some of my favorite artists are, and what I do during my downtime, I actually listen to a lot of sad music. I love Van Gogh. I ponder upon a lot of existential crisis type of philosophies in my own spare time. And I have a lot of dark thoughts. And out of these dark thoughts actually come a very desperate desire to be light, to be lighter. And I generally wear black like 99% of the time. In fact, I was wearing black, but it looked too dark. I changed it to blue last minute. But if you watch any of my NBCOT videos, you will see that I'm generally always wearing black. And I think for me, it's not necessarily because I align with darkness. It's because in my heart, I've always felt a desire to help those that are in the dark. And I don't want to get religious, but one of the prayers that I've always said when I was very young was, I used to pray this. I said, God, help me so that I can feel people's pain to my bone. Like if somebody's hurting, I want to intercede literally through my own body. I prayed that like before I was able to even think. What was I thinking? But today, I think I really do live that. I empathize quite a bit, and a lot of medical practitioners will say, compassion is good, empathy is not. But in this OT Miri community and in the videos, I wouldn't be able to do it if I didn't feel the pain and the darkness that shadows so many of us. And it's not something that I deny. My battle with my mental health is not something I deny. In fact, I wear proudly to say I battle with this, but I'm gonna fight with you so that we can stand in the light together. So black is my favorite color.
Yeah, that was so insightful. I feel like I learned so much more about you. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you for your question. I would never have expected that, but
I know. I always think it's kind of a fun, not so formal way just to get to know a different side of someone. So I like to see what colors people think they would be.
black.
Miri, I think that what you said about the empathy comes through in all your work and everything you do. So thank you so much again for doing this with us. For helping me and helping Devin now and helping everyone in the future that's going to come across these videos. We all really appreciate you so much.
Oh, it was really nice. I love you guys.
The feeling's mutual, Miri.
We'll definitely have to do this again.
Yes.
And if anyone's looking to find Miri's contact info, website, YouTube channel, I'll put the links in the description of the video down below.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Miri. Thanks, Devin.
Miri. Bye, guys.
Bye.